my chosen one. I want you to pause and focus completely on what I am about to tell you right now. Not in the background, not with half an ear, not in passing. Because exactly 72 hours ago, something important happened, and you did not even notice that it happened. You were too tired, too overwhelmed, too exhausted to recognize what was happening as a test. But that is exactly what it was. Not another test and not random stress. It was the final evaluation, the last exam, the decisive threshold that determines whether the soul is ready to take on real spiritual responsibility or whether it must return once more and repeat the preparation phase. And here is what you need to know. You passed. Not barely, not on the edge. You passed, and you did so convincingly, with such a clear change in your character that in the spiritual realm, what ancient sources call the Council of Elevation had to be convened immediately. And tonight, at exactly 3:33, something will happen that cannot be seen with physical eyes, but that your soul will feel very clearly. Heaven will officially confirm you, not figuratively and not symbolically, but literally, in invisible dimensions where spiritual power is actually transferred. You will receive access to a level you have been prepared for your entire life, even if you were not aware of it. Before you think that life after this will be easy, that a promotion means a smooth path with no difficulties, pause. What happens today is not a reward for good behavior. It is the recognition that more can be entrusted to you, and great responsibility always comes with great challenges. The only difference is that from this moment on, you will face them with access to resources you did not have before. An understanding that comes instantly, a discernment that works automatically, a calm that cannot be shaken, a flow that does not need to announce itself. That is what heavenly confirmation looks like. Not comfort, but capacity. Not relief, but reinforcement. Not rest, but readiness. It is important for you to understand what exactly happened 3 days ago, between roughly 4 in the afternoon and 8 in the evening. There was a moment that pushed you to your limits. Perhaps it was a conversation that went completely differently than expected. Perhaps it was a situation that tore open old wounds you thought had healed. Perhaps it was a loneliness so deep that you could not even cry anymore and simply sat in the empty silence. Perhaps it was a betrayal that came so unexpectedly that your mind refused to accept it. Perhaps it was a fatigue so intense that you had no energy left to think and could only react on pure instinct. Whatever it was for you personally, it put you into a state where you switched to autopilot. You were too tired to pretend, too exhausted to calculate your reaction, too broken to perform. You were simply the person you are at your deepest core. And in that exact moment, when no one was watching, when no one would ever have known if you had acted differently, when you had every justification in the world to respond with offense, revenge, selfishness, cruelty, or compromise, you did not. Your automatic response, the one that came from your depths when you had no strength left to control it, was honesty. Perhaps you were attacked with words and you did not strike back. Perhaps you had information that would have given you an advantage over others and you did not use it. Perhaps you had the opportunity to expose someone who had hurt you, and something inside you said no. Perhaps you were faced with a choice between your own comfort and the well-being of another, and you chose the latter, without hesitation. Perhaps you were alone, confronted with a temptation, and no one would have ever found out. But you walked away anyway. The specific form does not matter. Only one thing matters. Your virtue is no longer an action. It has become your nature. Honesty no longer depends on your energy level. It is your default setting. That is exactly what they were waiting for, because the spiritual world is not interested in what you know. It is not interested in how many texts you have memorized, how many books you have read, how many hours you have prayed or meditated. It is only interested in one question. Who are you when you do not have the strength to be someone else? Who are you when the masks fall because you are too tired to hold them up? Who are you when no one sees you and no one will ever find out? Because only that shows whether the transformation is genuine or merely performed. 3 days ago, in a state of complete exhaustion, you gave the answer. And it was so clear that the observing sphere of the spiritual world responded immediately. Not with applause, but with the recognition that arises when a person finally becomes what they were always meant to be. When potential becomes reality, when preparation becomes readiness. Now it is important to understand what happens at 3:33 and why this time is so significant. In spiritual reality, time is organized differently than in the physical world. But there are moments when the boundary between dimensions becomes thinner and the transfer occurs with minimal distortion. The period between 3 and 4 in the morning is the time when the collective consciousness of humanity is at its lowest level of activity. Most people are sleeping. The mental noise falls silent, and in this silence, precise action becomes possible. The number 333 carries additional meaning. The 3 symbolizes wholeness in all traditions: past, present, future, beginning, path, end, body, mind, soul. When the 3 is repeated 3 times, it is a sign of the completion of a cycle. The stage is finished. The level has been passed. Your consciousness will be sleeping, but your soul will be brought into a space where spiritual responsibility is established. There, 3 abilities will be activated. These are not instruments that can be misused. They only function in alignment with character. That is why the test was mandatory. The first ability is accelerated wisdom. You will begin to understand situations and people without logical analysis. You will sense the background of conversations, recognize inconsistencies, and see true motives. This is not mysticism, but deepened discernment. The second ability is lasting inner calm. Not a joy that depends on circumstances, but a peace that remains even in the storm. People will notice it, but you will not be able to explain where it comes from. The third ability is spiritual weight, not control, but influence. Your presence will begin to change the room. Starting tomorrow, you will notice signs. The first is mental clarity. Your thoughts will become clearer, your decisions easier. The second is emotional stability. Triggers will lose their power. You will be able to feel without losing yourself. The third sign is synchronicity. Coincidences that are too precise to be coincidental. This is not magic and not attraction. It is a restructuring of support. But there is a danger that can destroy everything. Spiritual pride. The thought that you stand above others. If you approach it, the process will reverse. The only way to preserve what has been reached is to remember who you were, to remember those who showed you grace, to understand the value of the path. The crown is not a trophy, it is a tool, and only you yourself can remove it when you consciously choose to compromise your character. You were not confirmed by accident. The world is in a phase of upheaval, and people are needed who maintain stability. Your task is not to save everyone and have answers to everything. Your task is to be the proof that change is possible. Be a light without explaining it. Be a support without proclaiming it. If you feel that something truly changed 3 days ago, write in the comments the words, "I am ready," not out of superstition, but as a sign of acknowledgement. And if you do not want to lose the connection to what will happen next, subscribe to the channel. That will be a conscious confirmation of your readiness to continue. And if someone came to mind while you were watching this, share this message with them. Perhaps it is precisely that person who needs to know right now that their pain is not the end, but the last test. This step is not outwardly, but inwardly important, because every conscious action consolidates the transition that has already begun within you. Now listen carefully, because after the confirmation, the phase of integration always begins. Many think that spiritual growth is a flash of light, an immediate enlightenment, a constant feeling of power. But in reality, it is a process of integration. It is the moment when new levels manifest, not as a loud event, but as a quiet yet sustainable shift in your perception, your reactions, and your decisions. You may feel no ecstasy. You may even feel a strange emptiness. That is normal. When the old identity disappears and the new one is not yet fully formed, a space of silence arises. Do not be afraid of it. It is not a loss. It is a transition. In the coming days, you may find it harder to participate in familiar conversations, not because you have become higher or smarter, but because your inner focus has shifted. Topics that used to captivate you may now seem superficial. Dramas that used to draw you in will now tire you. This is not a sign of alienation, but a sign of calibration. Your system is no longer tuned to chaos, and that can cause discomfort because the world around you still operates on the old frequencies. You may even feel lonely among people. That does not mean you have lost connection. It means you have outgrown certain forms of interaction. Do not try to artificially return to where you no longer fit. Do not tell yourself that something is wrong with you. Simply recognize that you are changing, and every change initially feels like a break. It is important to understand a subtle thing. After spiritual confirmation, the world does not become gentler. It becomes more honest. You will begin to see people as they are, without filters and illusions. You will begin to notice the discrepancy between words and actions. You will sense when someone is trying to manipulate you, even when everything outwardly appears polite and correct. This can be painful because you will sometimes be disappointed by those you previously respected. But this is not a loss of faith. It is a purification of perception. You will also notice that your own words gain weight. Sometimes you will say something almost casually and later see how it affected the situation. Sometimes you will be silent, and that exact silence will change the course of things. This is not mysticism. This is a consequence of inner composure. When you stop wasting your energy, every manifestation becomes more concentrated. During this phase, it is especially important not to rush anything. Do not try to immediately do something great. Do not seek immediate confirmation of your significance. True power needs no proof. It reveals itself in precision, in the right word said at the right time, in a boundary calmly set, in a decision made without inner struggle. You may encounter resistance. Sometimes it will be external. People will provoke you, test you, try to emotionalize you. Sometimes it will be internal, doubt, setbacks, thoughts that you made it all up. That too is part of the process. Every growth goes through a phase of stabilization. Old patterns do not simply disappear. They try to regain control, but the difference is that you now recognize them. And this recognition is already a victory. Do not expect yourself to always be perfect. You are still a human being. You can still get tired, get angry, doubt. The difference is not that these states no longer occur, but that you no longer fully identify with them. They pass through you, but they do not control you. That is maturity. You may also find that time feels different. The days can become denser, the events more intense. Sometimes you will feel that many things are happening simultaneously. This is not acceleration for the sake of chaos. This is concentration. When you reach a new level of responsibility, life stops being blurry. It becomes precise. Every decision has consequences. Every yes and every no begins to open or close something, and you sense that. During this time, it is especially important to protect your inner space. Do not overload yourself with the emotions of others. Do not take on what does not belong to you. You are not obligated to save everyone, to explain everything, or to support everyone. Sometimes the most powerful form of service is simply to be stable, to be the person beside whom one does not need to defend oneself, to be the person who does not amplify the chaos. You may find that people come to you with questions, not always directly. Sometimes they simply seek your presence. Do not feel obligated to give advice. Often it is enough simply to listen. Your task is not to give answers, but to be a space of clarity in which others begin to hear themselves. There is another important point that is rarely spoken about. After the confirmation, a phase of outer simplicity often comes. It may appear as though nothing great is happening. This is not a coincidence. It is a protective mechanism. If everything opened at once, the burden would be too great. That is why you first receive stability and then greatness. First the roots, then the branches. You may also experience heightened sensitivity. Music may touch you more deeply. Words may hurt you more strongly. Nature may calm you more quickly. This is not weakness. It is a sign that your system has been cleansed of unnecessary noise. But with sensitivity comes responsibility. Decide for yourself what you let in. Decide for yourself what meanings you consume. Decide for yourself with whom you spend your time. If at some point you feel like throwing everything aside, withdrawing and disappearing, do not be afraid. This is not a wish to give up. It is the wish to integrate. Give yourself space. Silence is now your ally. In silence, the consolidation takes place. Remember that your path does not need to be understandable to everyone, and it does not need to be comfortable for those around you. True destiny rarely corresponds to the expectations of others, but it always feels like inner alignment. Even when it is sometimes frightening, there is deep inside the feeling that it is right. You did not become a different person overnight. You became more yourself. And that is precisely what sometimes frightens the most, because you can no longer hide behind roles, excuses, and the expectations of others. But therein also lies the freedom. If you are hearing this and feel a quiet, calm recognition, not excitement, not euphoria, but a deep yes inside you, then the process is running correctly. Do not rush anything. Appreciate it. Do not compare yourself with others. Your path is unique. And one more thing, you do not have to walk this path alone. That is why it is important to stay connected, to observe, to hear confirmations, and to receive support. Subscribing to the channel and the comment, "I am ready that you have left or will leave," is not merely an action. It is an anchor, a reminder that you have chosen attentiveness over escape. New stages lie ahead of you, new levels of understanding, new tests, not of endurance, but of precision. But you are ready for them, not because you have become perfect, but because you have become honest with yourself. Your path continues, and now you no longer walk it blindly. And at the end, it is important to say something quiet but fundamental. Do not wait for the moment when you feel completely ready. Such a point does not exist. Readiness does not mean having no fear, but the ability to live with it without letting it take control. Sometimes you will doubt yourself. Sometimes you will return to old thoughts. Sometimes you will catch yourself wishing you were still the same as before, because the familiar feels safe. Do not judge yourself in those moments. Simply take note and return to the present. Every time you choose awareness over automatism, you consolidate your level. And remember, you do not need to prove to the world who you are. It is enough for the world to feel it in your presence. You do not need to speak loudly to be heard. Your consistency already speaks for you. Your clarity already has influence. Your silence already changes the room. And that is more than enough for the path to continue exactly as it should.